Hello, welcome to my channel, Loc'D, and today we're gonna just talk about 10 books that will fit in the Saint Treme graveyard section of Blackoween, aka Tula's Parish, or just 10 black horror that I think that you should be looking at, you should be reading tomorrow. Actually, today. Actually, you should have been reading these books. I'm not gonna shame you on the internet, but I thought I should let you know. Y'all, I had to leave for a moment because the lip was giving chappy and I just couldn't do it. Without further ado, let me go ahead and get into the videos. You're probably like, oh my God, where is Bree energy? In the ground. I'm very tired. I actually filmed all my stuff kind of in and out of order, so I apologize about that, but you got to do stuff when you got time to do it. So let's get back into the 10 books that I think that you should read that are black horror, okay? Black horror, which is one of my faves. So the first book we're going to talk about is a book that I have talked about many a times on my channel. I'm talking about many a times on my channel. And I've always wanted people to get more immersed in this author's writing. You're going to hear me talk about this author multiple times in different videos, for Blackoween, without Blackoween. I just really, truly love the mind of this author. So without further ado, our first book we're going to talk about is the African Immortal series. I know I said book, but it is books. This is a series that follows a young girl named Jessica. She meets this guy called David, or I forget the other pronunciation for his name, but she meets him and they have like this love affair. They have this child. Things happen. She's starting to notice that, you know, people in her life is going missing. She's starting to notice that David is not being truly honest with her about things that's going on. David has this like weird kind of attachment to her, but he is not realizing that what he was running away from is going to quickly meet up and catch up to him and cause endangerment to the new life that he's trying to lead. However, Jessica, unfortunately, and her child are innocent bystanders to his foolery. But it is done in a way that kind of makes you as the reader kind of want to fight Jessica and want to constantly tell David that he must do time. Your frustration mixed with your intrigue of wanting to know how the story ends just constantly fight against each other. And for me, I feel like I'm nosy and I gotta figure out what's going on. And there's also kind of like this undertone of like biblical knowledge that's been turned into a horror that I found to be particularly interesting in this series. So if you're looking for something that has the vibes of what I just said, definitely the African Immortal series by Tananarive Due is the books for you. The next book I'm going to talk about is a book by Kailyn Barron. I fell in love with Kailyn Barron when I read Cinderella is Dead. I really enjoyed that book. It's one of the books that I read that have a slow pace that I was not bothered by. Sometimes a slow-paced book really bothers me. I don't really enjoy them as much as I want to. I want to be a person on the internet and being like, hey, you know, it depends on the book, it depends on the book. But the more that I've been reading this year, I'm starting to feel like if the pace is too slow, then I'm going to be uninterested. I don't know if that's the ADHD. I don't know if that's the Gemini in me, but I'm just telling you right here, right now, that we got to pick up the pace. But with Kailyn Barron, I tend to not mind her slow-paced books that she writes. But this book is a book outside of what she typically writes. And it's called You're Not Supposed to Die Tonight. If you see me looking to the side, it's because I'm trying to, you know, remember the books as I wrote them in order for this video. So You're Not Supposed to Die Tonight. It's a slasher book, and it is about this young girl. She is 18, newly 18, and she really loves going to this camp and doing all kind of things for this camp and making sure that it's like set up like a slasher movie that was recorded years ago, but they're kind of doing this reenactment of this on the grounds of where the movie was shot. And next thing you know, people are coming up dead. It's a slasher. Mugs are coming up dead. And then we have a final girl, and she's the final girl. Or is she? That's something I'm still trying to work on, if she was the final girl. But you'll have to read the book to figure that out. And that's on period. The next book is called House of Hunger by Alexa Henderson. She is an author who is an auto buy for me, or auto read. I just gotta read everything that she writes, because everything she writes to me has this kind of like gothic horror vibe to it, which I'm realizing that I'm really starting to get in touch with. It's kind of as if she's influenced by Anne Rice in a way, even though I don't like Anne Rice. But you can see the influences of Anne Rice in her writing. And House of Hunger follows the story of this young woman who is really just trying to get out of her circumstances, make a better life for herself. And she finds herself being like, I'm going to be a blood maiden. And now, does she really know what that is or know what that entails? No. This is just something that the rich does. So she goes ahead, she responds to this ad of sorts of like, hey, we're looking for a blood maid for such and such. And she goes ahead and do this. And while she's doing this and in this home, she's starting to realize that things are not what they seem. And people are starting to have like an obsessive nature over the woman who owns and runs this home. So as you're reading the book, you're starting to peel over, or not peel over, but peel back the onions, if you will, of like the more insidious and sinister things that are happening. She's starting to notice that there are claw marks or nail marks in furniture. She's starting to notice that, you know, some girls are more irritable or more possessive about what's going on. She's starting to notice that the woman who owns the house is like, have favorites, and, you know, they're in a certain order, and everybody wants to be one of these favorites, but don't understand what it means and what you're sacrificing by being a favorite of this woman in the house. So as you just continue to read the book, you just learn more and more about the woman, the main character, like I talked about, and also what people are actually losing, which I felt like was really sinister and done really well in this book. So I think that this is a book you should want to pick up as well. So the next book is called The Taking of Jake Livingston, and for the lack of a better word, this book was a mind fuck. It follows the story of this young man named Jake. He is a young black boy who can see the dead. And he is kind of, in a way, and I'm saying kind of because I gotta let you read the book before I make any like stern statements and then I end up spoiling. I'm really good at accidentally spoiling books, so that's what I'm trying not to do. But Jake meets this ghost named Sawyer. And Sawyer is a ghost who killed a bunch of students in his school and then himself. Okay, and Sawyer is probably one of the most sinister ghosts that I have ever read. And I've read a lot of ghost stories. I'm thinking that I might do a video talking about like the ghost books that I've read, if you guys are interested. But yeah, sinister as hell. Just so disruptive, so hard. Just, my life was terrible, so I'm gonna take everybody else out. And you're right, you're reading this book and seeing the inner turmoil that Sawyer is putting on Jake and trying to convince Jake to do certain things. It's just really, really messed up. And it's just was done really well, of like listening to Jake's perspective or listening to how Sawyer feels, and like back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. I just found this horror novel to be really suspenseful. If you're looking for a book that's going to be really suspenseful, this is that book for you. The other books that I talked about, like You're Not Supposed to Die Tonight, is also really suspenseful. Tananarive the Immortal series have a slow suspense throughout the whole series, but if you're looking for a high-paced and just the stakes are high almost all the time, The Taking of Jake Livingston is the book for you. And this is also a bit of a possession story as well in some moments of the book as well. You're kind of being like, so what is happening here? How is this happening? I definitely recommend this book, and I'm sad because it took me a long time to want to read this book because the cover is so like haunting and like scary, and I was like, oh no. You can like scary books and also be very intimidated by those scary books. And I'm looking at Goodreads right now, and it has 13,000 ratings, and I don't get how it's a 3.4. Also in this book, there is undertones of racism and how race plays a part in, like, you know, Black people real life horror stories. So that is something that I think also make this book a bit more enjoyable. The next book is the only book I think that I've read by Tiffany D. Jackson, and it's called Allegedly. It still gives me nightmares. The last chapter of Allegedly was wild. That's probably one of the best last chapters I've ever read in my life. This is a story about a young girl. She was wrongfully accused of murdering someone in this book. So Allegedly follows the story of this young Black girl who is being convicted of killing this white child while the white child was in, I guess, the care of her and her mother. And while you're reading this book, you're trying to figure out who is responsible of killing this white child. Was it done purposefully? Was it an accident? Was it neglect? You're just trying to figure out what happened to this child. And the way that it's written is in an eerie way, like an eerie, suspenseful way of like, this could have happened, maybe it didn't, or this did happen, but you don't know why this happened, or you don't know the trauma that I've experienced of why this happened. Sorry, y'all, my camera died. Life be happening, you know. So yeah, so this young girl, her name is Mary. She is, you know, just trying to pretty much survive. There's a huge theme about survival with Mary because when she was accused, she got sent to this like juvenile detention place. I don't remember the name of it, but this juvenile detention place for like a lot of years, like a lot of years she was there. And then she got sent to a group home, and then she was like kind of sort of dating somebody, and then she gets pregnant. And then she's like, well, it may come to a point where I have to tell people, you know, what happened. But the way that she was telling people was odd, and odd in a way of like, girl, what is going on? Do you really remember what happened? And then she opens up more about the abuse she experienced from her mother. And then you're like, oh my God, her mother is this terrible person. And then abuse about, you know, other people. So you're like, you're still confused on who is the actual suspect on who killed this white child. And also while you're reading it, you're thinking to yourself of like, man, there are just so many levels of how racism impacts so many systems, because if this was a Black child, would the case be this severe, is what I kept asking myself while reading this book. So I think the author did a really good job. She really kept you glued to the page from page 1 to the last chapter. And still, when you finish the book, you're still going to be confused. I just want you to know. But it's in a good way, and it's not in a way that makes you want more type of confusing. I mean, that was just for me. So I think that this is a good book if you're looking for a book that has like unreliable narrators. It's a puzzle that you can kind of, you know, you can reach and want to touch it, but you're not going to get close to it. This is the kind of book that you would want to read. Next book is by an author who I've talked about several times on my channel. He's actually an author that I would love to do an interview for Blackoween, so I'm going to go ahead and manifest that. I've tried a couple times, no successful attempts, but I am going to keep manifesting that, and that is S.A. Cosby book that's called All the Sinners Bleed. This follows the story of this guy. He's from this town in Virginia, and he was an FBI agent. But then when a position came up to be the sheriff, he went ahead and took it because there has been a strain of murders of black bodies throughout this town. And somebody knows something. Somebody knows what's going on in this town, and nobody's really talking. But the way that these bodies are just being turned up is just really causing some internal turmoil with him. And not only with him in trying to figure out who did this, his relationship with his father is very turmoilous. He has a lot of guilt and resentment towards his father based on what happened to his mother and how the relationship has kind of trajected. In addition to, he is in this town where a lot of the black people are Baptist Southern Christians, and they are believing deeply in the faith of God. And he is like, should we really be doing this? We need to band together and try to figure out what happened. God is not going to be the solution to everything. So you get glimpse of conversations that he's having with pastors about his faith, about how he lost his faith, when he lost his faith, and how he's really struggling with the idea of where does faith takes precedent in a actual crime investigation. Pretty much he just follows where the evidence goes, and then he realizes that the reason why these black people are being murdered in this town is way more deeper than he could ever known, and who is tied to exactly. So while I'm reading this book, as always, I really love the way that S.A. Cosby writes with such grit, truth, and promise in his books. I also love how he has strong black male characters who just say very prophetic things. So I found myself even reading this book having to open up a note on my phone and watching typing in so many of the quotes. One of my favorite quotes is when the main character, Titus, was talking to this black woman, and the black woman said, "I don't have to do nothing but be black and die." And just remembering what that means to me and mean to my community, and how I haven't heard that saying in many, many years. It just really touched me of how he was able to incorporate that old black saying in a more contemporary context. I really appreciated that. So S.A. Cosby does a really good job of writing crime fiction, and I am just so excited that he exists. So definitely go and read that book. The next book I'm going to talk about is called Loc'D by Megan Gidding. And this is the last book that I'm talking about in the 10 book recommendations that I've read. And if you watch the first video, I'll put a link up there to the first video. I talk about all the books I read and 2 to 4, even sometimes 5 books that are on my radar that I'm going to do a vlog for. And you're going to see that vlog the week after you're watching this video. So Loc'D follows a story of this young girl who really just got to get some money. She got to get in a better position than she was before. She's taking care of her sick mom, and she's like, I just have to provide the income that would help me and help my mom. So she signs up for this experiment, but the experiment is definitely not what she thought that she was signing up for, and it's taking a lot from her mentally, physically, everything. And there are just some parts in this book that was so gory, and you as a reader is like, what? And it's definitely reminding you of how historically, even currently in medicine, how black bodies are not being respected, how black women bodies are not being respected, and how, they will just use us for different experiments and different things to kind of be like, we're going to do this to kind of see if this medicine works or not, right? So it was definitely giving Tuskegee horror story, okay? If you're looking for a book that makes experiments into a horror fixation, definitely get into this book. Now, the next book I'm going to talk about is by one of my favorite authors. She's Canadian, a black woman, Lizelle Sansbury. It's called Delicious Monsters. So I attempted to read this book last year, and then something happened and I wasn't able to get to it. So I decided to reread it or finish reading it for this series that I'm doing with y'all. So I'm going to go ahead and read to y'all. Like I said before, just giving myself accommodations because I have dyslexia. This book is about this girl named Daisy. She sees dead people. Something impossible to forget is bustling. Ghost-packed Toronto. She usually managed to deal with her unwanted abilities, but she completely unprepares to be dumped by her boyfriend. So when her mother inherits a secluded mansion in northern Ontario, where she spent her childhood summers, Daisy jumps at the chance to escape. But the house is nothing like Daisy expects, and she begins to realize that her experience with the supernatural might be no match for her mother's secrets, nor what lurks behind these walls. A decade later, because this book is in two different perspectives, a decade later, Brittany is desperate to get out from under her thumb of her abusive mother. A best-selling author who claims her stay at Miracle Mansion allowed her to see the error of her ways. But Brittany knows that that's nothing but a sham. She decides the new season of her popular haunted web series will uncover what happened to a young black girl in the mansion 10 years prior, and finally exposes her mother's lies. But as she gets more wrapped up in the investigation, she'll have to decide if she can only bring one story to light, which one mattered most, Daisy's or her own. So I'm really excited to finish reading this because I was really intrigued with probably, I think, the first 20% that I read. So I'm excited to go back to it and read it as in a vlog for y'all in the next video that you'll see next week. And then the last book that I'm going to talk about is a book by an author that I've always wanted to read by this author. However, it's a domestic thriller, which sometimes could be a hit or a miss for me. So we'll see how I enjoy it. So this book is written by L.S. Stratton. It's a story about Tasha Jenkins. Tasha Jenkins has finally found the courage to leave her abusive husband. Taking her teenager son with her, Tasha checks into a hotel the night before their flight out of D.C. and out of Cordell Jenkins' life forever. But escaping isn't so easy, and Tasha soon finds herself driving back to her personal hell. As she is leaving, a white woman pounds on her car window, begging to be let in. Behind the woman, an angry man is in pursuit. Tasha makes a split-second decision that will alter the course of her life. She lets her in and takes off. That right there is, I don't know, I've just seen a lot of scary movies where you open the door and then you're dead. But also, I see you being like, that woman is in trouble, let me help that woman. So I get the many perspectives of that. Tasha and Madison, the white woman, may have very different everyday realities, but what they have in common is marriages they need out of. The two women want to help each other, but a very different idea of what that means. They're on a collision course that will end in the case files of DC MPD Homicide Unit. Unraveling the truth of what really happened may be impossible and futile, because what has the truth ever done for women like Tasha and Madison? So this is a psychological suspense. I love suspense. Please have suspense in your book. If I feel like I gotta wait until paint dry for you to get to the point, we're gonna have problems. We're just gonna have problems. So I am excited to read this book and talk to you guys about it in a vlog form. Now, don't forget that these are all books that you can read that can, you know, be read for different places in Toolish Parish. But I thought doing this series would just help people understand that, you know, there are so many black writers out there. This is what you should read. And to also give people an idea of books that are available to read for Blackoween this year. So I am excited to continue the series in the month of May. And I will see y'all in the next video. Have a wonderful day. Talk to y'all later. Bye.